freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dreams some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face, and the effect that it is having on just about every aspect of our lives. And if you want to join the conversation tonight, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'm happy to take your call. If you want to ask me a question, if you want to share a story or two, if you have something you think would be of interest to the listening audience, anything at all you want to talk about, just give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Well, I hope you're having a great Memorial Day weekend. And as it is Memorial Day weekend, the song that plays at the beginning and the end of the program becomes ever more apropos. And I want to encourage anyone out there who is of a mind to check out the Anthem for the Millennium, or more commonly known as America, My Home. You can Google either one of those titles, either Anthem for the Millennium or America, My Home. And you can also just go to YouTube and key in or search for either of those titles, Anthem for the Millennium or America, My Home. And you'll be routed to one of the several videos that feature the song that you hear at the beginning and the end of the program. And hopefully maybe you'll be affected by the message of the song, which is basically that America's greatness has never really lied. Its true greatness has never really resided in its military might or its economic clout. You know, America does have an incredible amount of economic power, even though it's about to be taken over by China as the world's largest currency, or the world's largest economy, excuse me. You know, the Chinese have a couple of billion people, you know, and that's a far cry from the per capita wealth that the United States has. So, you know, we do have incredible economic power. We also are the world's only remaining superpower. That probably will not last that much longer. But really, that's not where our greatness has ever really resided. Our greatness has resided in the character of people who honor our best traditions and ideals and live them out in their everyday lives. It's those individuals who shoulder the burden every day, who roll up their sleeves and go to work, trying to make this world a better place, innovating, creating opportunities. These are the folks that not only make America work, but make America great. And the better we are as people, the better we are in character, then the stronger our families are, the stronger our communities are, and the greater our country is. It's just that simple. It all starts with character. That's really the purpose of this program, which is why you hear this patriotic piece play at the beginning and the end of the program. And it's important for us always to recognize that fact. And because it's so important, and because I have long been of a mind to try and inspire people to heed that all-important message, I was inspired back in 1998, 1999, thereabouts, to write this song. And with the help of my wife, who helped me with the lyrics, and with some prodding from my brother, who kind of teased out of me what it was that I really wanted to say, before long, the song called America My Home was born. And really, it means a lot to me to have its message touch people's hearts and inspire. And I know that this Memorial Day weekend, all across the country in several venues, folks are performing the song to do just that, to inspire others about where America's greatness really lies. And so I encourage you to check out America My Home. Play it sometime this weekend. Listen to it. Maybe it will touch your heart as well. Maybe it will inspire you. So go to either do a Google search for Anthem for the Millennium or America My Home, or just go to YouTube and again use the keywords America My Home or Anthem for the Millennium, and you'll come across one of the many videos that is paired with the song, and hopefully you'll be inspired. And maybe you'll even be inspired to be one of those folks who wants to join the ever-growing chorus of individuals helping to carry the song's message to people. Maybe you're not a performer per se, but maybe you work in a place where you have somebody in mind who would be just the right person to perform it. Maybe it's a choir. I've had teachers and choir directors and music instructors from schools call me and say that they were inspired when they heard the song, and they decided it was just the piece to teach their students or to have a choral group perform or whatnot. I'm always happy to provide folks with the right arrangement for the song. We have full orchestral backups. We have choral backups. We have simple scores for soloist and piano or keyboard. We have small ensemble scores, you name it. We can provide it. All you have to do is contact me, and probably the best way to contact me is through my blog at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com. That's probably the easiest way to contact me, and I'm happy to provide you what you need if you should be interested. You know, this is the patriotic season between now and Veterans Day, and we've got some other patriotic holidays coming up. Not the least of which is the Fourth of July weekend, and this year I think the Fourth falls on a Monday, so that makes it a really nice long weekend. And I know that several churches that Sunday before will be featuring performances of the song. I hope yours is one of them. So please check out the videos and the song. Please contact me if you're of a mind to join the chorus of performers. We really need to spread the message and inspire people. The whole basis for this country and the freedom that we enjoy, the whole premise, right from the beginning, was that if you gave decent people, decent, moral folks with their own solid internal moral compass, if you gave those folks free rein, left them alone, basically, do not repress them in any way, no unwarranted government intrusion into their lives, and no burdensome micromanaging of their lives, no burdensome rules and regulations that hinder freedom. The thought was you give decent folks with their own solid internal moral compass, this kind of freedom, and they will do fantastic things. They will do wonderful things. They will build great things. They will forge great communities. They will build strong families. They'll innovate. They'll create opportunities, not just for themselves, but for others. And prosperity is the inevitable result of that. That's what makes for prosperity. And unfortunately, in character-impaired times, especially in the kinds of times we've been in for the last several years, in character-impaired times, there's a constant, absolutely constant pressure from government, constant temptation to restrict freedoms, to pass burdensome rules and regulations that only serve to shackle decent, moral, conscientious folks. Because the folks who are not conscientious and who are prone to play fast and loose with the rules, these folks don't pay any attention to any of the rules or restrictions that we try to legislate. They don't pay any attention to. We can pass all the laws we want to. It doesn't affect them because they don't pay any attention to them anyway. The only thing that is accomplished there is that decent people's freedoms are restricted even more. So we have to remember that. We have to remember that. And if we really want to preserve freedom, it's not going to happen by just sending good men and women into harm's way to defend with their very lives the country. That's not ultimately what's going to keep us really strong and safe. We owe all those men and women who have done so, we owe them a deep, deep debt of gratitude. There's no question about that. Absolutely no question about that. And the way we have treated these folks has been truly unfortunate, truly unforgivable. not just the VA system, but the other kinds of treatment that folks get when they get back to this country, what they have to endure. So many families are stressed to the max because we've shrunk our military so much and given the military so few resources that these multiple deployments have been necessary, especially with our presence all over the globe these days, trying to put out fires and to keep fires from growing or bursting out in many places. And so we've stretched ourselves and our military so thin, and so many times they have to be deployed multiple times, putting great stress on families. And then to come back and not be able to get the kind of health care they need because warfare has changed so much with these improvised explosive devices and other tactical weapons of guerrilla type war, of terror campaigns. We have so many people coming back wounded. The casualty numbers, they just don't tell the whole story. We have so many people, tens of thousands of individuals who have lost limbs, who are in other ways incapacitated dealing with post-traumatic stress, and they can't get the services they need. We have, at last count, I did a count one time, 21 major charitable organizations just to help out and give the kinds of services that our government rightly owes to our returning warriors. And unfortunately, some of those charities don't do a very good job of getting the money where it needs to go. But we are an incredibly generous people, ponying up millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars through all these organizations to help out because we recognize the need, when in fact they should be taken care of anyway. There shouldn't be any need for any of these organizations. Not a one. Of course, this issue is being demagogued by some of the political candidates out there because everybody knows that it's a problem and it's a disgrace. It's a national disgrace. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we owe this debt of gratitude. I can't begin to express the appreciation that I have for those in my inner circle of friends and acquaintances, folks at my church, and in my community that I'm connected with. I know of several families, really good folks, who have been taxed and stressed to the limit because of the demands put on one member or another in the family who has basically agreed to serve and risk their lives to protect our freedoms. And it's just not right. It's a national disgrace. But what I was saying earlier is that even though we owe this great debt of gratitude, what's really going to keep us safe, what's really going to make us great, is not building the biggest army in the world. And it's not going to be us being the richest country in the world. Those things would likely follow. What makes us strong and what makes us great is when we are of good character, and therefore we build strong families first. Families are the first small communities that our children experience. They're the training grounds of socialization. You know, there's that book, All I Needed to Know, I learned, all I ever really needed to know, I learned in kindergarten. It's those formative years in families with parents who care and who model, who exemplify dedication and service and responsibility. Not just who preach it, but who show it with their actions. Parents who model and demonstrate fidelity. Fidelity in a relationship. And not just fidelity, but kind, conscientious treatment. That's where it all starts. One only has to look at our national divorce rate to understand the depth of the problem here. And we've almost taken it for granted. Well, we have taken it for granted. We've gotten so used to it, it doesn't faze us anymore. It doesn't faze us. The fact that the vast majority of marriages fail doesn't faze us anymore. At one time, there was a time not too long ago, only a few decades ago, when the thought that, even 1 in 4 marriages might end in divorce was just unthinkable. And now it's just so commonplace and so accepted that relationships don't hold together. And this is where our young folks learn all of the values that have to carry them through the rest of their lives. I've been doing these training workshops all over the country, and I'm going to be going out again this next time into the Albany, New Haven, Connecticut, and White Plains, New York area. And I'll be there a week after next, carrying the message and training professionals, trying to equip them with tools to deal with the phenomenon of our time, which is character disturbance. Clinicians who are on the front line, counselors of one type or another, who are on the front lines of the problem, who try to hold contentious relationships together, try to help folks work things out, only to see folks with serious character disturbances fail at relationship after relationship after relationship after relationship. You'd think that after about the third or fourth marriage, somebody would get a clue. But many times, there are few lessons learned. And the reason for that is that when it comes to character, when the lessons that are learned are the lessons when the world is trying to tell us basically that it's our very approach to things that's haywire, that it's the way we think about things and the way we do things that really needs to change, that we need to change, that we need to change the kind of person that we are, our approach to life, our attitude toward things. When that's what life is trying to teach us, character impaired people dig in their heels And they say, no, I'm not going to do that. I like the way I do things way too much. I like who I am, even if anybody else has a problem with it. We see great evidence of that in several of our political candidates, not just one in particular. Folks like to point the finger. There are plenty of them out there. There's only one individual I think has any decency of character. And in that particular candidate, I don't agree with all the way. I agree with his sentiments. I don't agree with his ideas about how to transform a country that's growing further apart, and a country in which the split between, or the gap between rich and poor is growing ever wider. You know, in some parts of our communities, the unemployment rate, the real unemployment rate, is as high as 65%. It was never that bad in the Great Depression. Something's really seriously wrong here, folks. We've had our heads buried in the sand. And we barely have the character to have any kind of a conversation about it. We're so divided and so contentious. People were rioting outside of several of Trump's latest rallies, doing violence, jumping on cars, waving foreign flags. I'm sorry, I don't get that, folks. I don't get that at all. I come from a family of immigrants. There was no banner waving of the flag, no flag waving of the place they left to find a better life here. This was the land of promise and opportunity. They didn't like all of the values that seem to be promoted by our culture. But they were so drawn to our freedom, so drawn to the absence of constant threat of persecution, that they worshiped this place with all its ills. And they immediately wanted to pitch in and do their part, not only to make a way for themselves, but to make a contribution. Now, I understand that some folks are offended by some of the divisive talk. We have such divisive rhetoric out there. And they're all guilty of that, for the most part. Whether it's dividing rich against poor, liberals against conservatives. I myself, I will tell you right now, am a staunch, steadfast, independent. Both sides call me one of those fence sitters. Somebody who really doesn't have a set of core beliefs. I know what my core beliefs are. And I'm strongly independent. I think that the extremists on both sides are absolutely stark raving mad. There's that old saying, the truth is always likely somewhere in the middle. Well, that's where I stand. Because I can see some of the arguments on both sides. And I do think that there are some solutions somewhere in the middle. But it's really hard in our character impaired age to have an honest debate and an honest conversation about the principles and ideals that we want to carry us through. People get hot-headed. People get intransient. And they get violent. They also don't really open themselves up to any consideration. They go into the debate closed-minded, with the arrogance of knowing, with the arrogance of believing that their way is superior. This kind of narcissistic mindset. This is the age of narcissism, rampant narcissism, promoted in large measure by our culture of entitlement. So in that, because of that fact, I have been blogging on my blog at manipulative-people.com about the 10 Commandments of Character, I call them, the life lessons that we have to learn in order to be of sound character. It's not just what our children need to learn as they're growing up, if they're going to enter adulthood as responsible human beings, but it's also what anyone wanting to turn their lives around, any adult wanting to be better, do better, would have to do to make that happen. And my latest article introduces a series now on the third commandment, which has to do with keeping a balanced sense of self-esteem. And already it's sparked some debate among the commentators on the blog, because we've had some pretty misguided notions about self-esteem in the past. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about that tonight. And if you want to join the conversation, maybe you have a question about it, maybe you have already read the article that I posted last Friday on the blog. Maybe you just want to share something else. In any case, feel free to give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296 here at UCY.TV on the Character Matters program. I'm happy to take your call. I mentioned these 10 Commandments of Character. This is soon to be a book by my co-author my co-author Kathy Armistead, who was my co-author on our latest release, How Did We End Up Here? A book that, along with the Judas Syndrome, my book for the Christian faith community, my book, The Judas Syndrome, and How Did We End Up Here, both of those books sold at a rate that I never thought possible on my tour a couple of weeks ago, and I ran out at my second to the last venue. I barely had enough copies of my international bestseller, In Sheep's Clothing, The Definitive Guide to Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People. And I had only a couple of copies left of Character Disturbance. Character Disturbance, my book that explains all the wide varieties of character-impaired people walking around out there who are likely to make your lives miserable, including narcissists and psychopaths and antisocial personalities and passive-aggressive and covert-aggressive personalities, you name it, borderline personalities, all the folks that will make you a little crazy, and how you can understand and deal with them. And especially, my book, Character Disturbance, tells you what to look for when you go looking for help so that you don't experience what some people call therapy-induced trauma, which means that you went for help and instead the therapy experience only made you feel worse or victimized you in some way. So I encourage you to avail yourself of the series of articles that's on the blog at manipulative-people.com. And stay tuned. At the end of the summer, I will have an announcement about the availability of my second book with Kathy Armistead, The 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life. It will be in trade paperback. It will be available on Amazon.com, just as my other books are. My first two books have been out so long now that even though they're available in some stores and you can always order them through your bookstore, because of, the average shelf life of books, In Sheep's Clothing this September is going to be out. It'll be marking its 20th year in print. Now, it's been revised several times, but 20 years is a long time, and no bookstore is going to keep a book on the shelf, although you can still find it actually in some bookstores on the shelf. But they'll always order it for you, and you can always get it on Amazon. You can get it as a Kindle download. You can get all my books that way. As a matter of fact, How Did We End Up Here? My book with Kathy Armistead that addresses the issue for those of you in a relationship that has really gone south, or maybe you're in the midst of that relationship and questioning how things got to the point where they are. Or maybe you've come to the end of a toxic relationship and wondering how it even happened, and wanting to make sure that nothing similar happens again in a future relationship. That's what our book, Kathy and me, that's what we tried to do in our book, How Did We End Up Here, is address those very questions. So, but that book has been on Amazon now for about 2 months and doing very well, I might say, thanks to great word of mouth. And now the reviews are starting to come in. And as the reviews come in and as they're positive and people react well to it, it will only grow in popularity. But what I wanted to say is that book, like the Judas Syndrome and like my other books, is also available in Kindle format and other ebook formats. So you can always download it. You can go to iBooks for some of my books as well. You can get it in any format. You can even get In Sheep's Clothing in CD, audio version. I see we have a call coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and take the call. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters.
Hello, Dr. Simon. Listening to your program, very good as usual, very informative. One of the things that I wanted to mention was the character of our society today, I think, has been lost. I turn on the TV and I barely watch it, maybe once, twice a year. It's so full of smut. The media basically is teaching our children. The radio, the music, the type of music, what does it promote? It's sex, it's violence, same thing on TV. What have they done in the schools? They've taken away so much of the moral character, that standards that were set years ago are no longer there. We're to the point where we want to have unibathrooms. So I just wanted to make that point. It is very difficult in society to really regain a certain amount of our moral standards and character. And then I was going to comment about your subject, your topic this week on your blog. A lot of people still are under the impression that these character disordered people don't feel good about themselves.
Yes.
And
yes.
I highly don't believe that's true.
Yeah.
They do know what they're doing. They feel superior. They feel good about themselves. And I think you're very right about that.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, and I hope you hang on for just a little bit here. This is something that comes out of, unfortunately, of traditional therapy, traditional psychological paradigms that saw all these disturbing manifestations of people's character as basically compensations for underlying feelings of insecurity and low self-worth and like that. And to make that assumption in our day and age is very dangerous. That actually can sometimes happen, but in these days, unfortunately, too many of our folks with narcissistic personalities really do think that they're all that. They really have what the literature now calls the grandiose type of narcissism as opposed to the vulnerable type narcissism. So when I hear people, for example, criticizing Donald Trump and saying that underneath it he's a small, insecure man, this comes out of that kind of old thinking, that old psychology thinking. And it's dangerous thinking in our times. There are people who really do, whether they have anything to show for themselves or not, think that they're just absolutely great, and they're impervious to what other people think about them. And so when they hear criticism, they're very aware of what it is that people don't like about them and what people find at fault in them. They don't care. They simply don't care.
That's the experience that I have found, the same thing, that the individuals that I deal with that are classic, that you describe, the textbooks describe, they do not feel inferior or that they feel bad about themselves. They actually feel good. They feel superior to you, and they think what they're doing, how they are, is just fine. It doesn't matter to them. And they don't have, I have not seen that level of low self-worth. That isn't there. Right. I've never detected that in any of their actions.
Yeah, when I first was clued into this, when I was doing my clinical case study research, I was looking at about 500 and some cases before I wrote my first book. I broke down these inflated ego people into two camps, the more neurotic type and the more character disturbed type, because I didn't have any other labels for them. And when I did that, that was 20 years ago, when I did that, there was absolutely no empirical support for the notion. Only in the last 7 years has the research now started to validate what I've been saying for all that time. And now people are finally starting to come around. But as I do these training workshops all across the country, at least half of the audience, and these are professionals who are on the front line who are supposed to be helping people deal with problems, at least half of them are still of this old mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so it's really it's like they're seeing a light bulb go off in their heads, and they're seeing something for the very, very first time. As a matter of fact, at many of my workshops, fortunately, there are some folks who have either had direct experience or are familiar with my work, and they will kind of help do my work for me. When we get some folks who are steeped in this kind of old psychology, and they ask these questions, and they'll say, "Well, like, don't you think somebody we'll pick on Donald, but don't you think somebody like Donald Trump is really just insecure inside?" And then people will kind of jump on them and say, "Well, that can happen, but not all the time." And some people just really do have a big fat head. Now, have you read the article that I posted Friday?
Yes, I did.
And it's one of a series. We've just now started with this idea of self-esteem. But one of the points I tried to make in the article is that for many, many years, educators and psychology writers, self-help people, they were all telling folks that you just can't have too much self-esteem. You can't build a kid's self-esteem up too much. And boy, we sure couldn't do anything that might temper someone's self-esteem. We wanted them to feel great, even if they'd done nothing really to earn it. And this has been a huge, huge mistake. First of all, you can have too much self-esteem. There are people who can think way too much of themselves, and we now know how that even happens. We now know how people get that fat head and what leads to it.
One of the things, when you're talking about this, Doctor, I have grandchildren, and everything they do is awesome, 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 awesome.
Yeah.
If they pick up a paper on the floor that they dropped or something, they're awesome. And
Yeah.
these kids, I'm not fooling. They think they are all that and more, and they are so special
Yeah.
that they can do no wrong. It's sad because you are narcissists in the making. I know my oldest grandchild, son, he's 22. He is. We've actually had run-ins. He thinks just how you describe their character, exact model of one. And what do you do about it? The parents are building this. Society helps build it. Everybody's awesome. You can't tell them that they're wrong, that they did something bad. You're not supposed to correct them. You're not supposed to spank them. You're not supposed to do that.
Right. And I don't want to preview too much of the series of articles, but the other thing we were never supposed to do in this new psychology, not only were we not supposed to do anything that might dampen a person or a person's self-esteem, but we were also not supposed to invite them to feel badly about themselves in any way as a person, even when they did something wrong. It was okay for them to feel a little guilty, but they should never feel ashamed. And one of the things I learned early on, and now there's research. By the way, if you have a chance, if you're interested in good scientific research, there's a researcher by the name of Brummelman and his colleagues that have done research, especially on this issue of praising kids so much. Mm-hmm. Now the research is telling us how harmful that's been. And of course, anybody with half a brain knew this before they started doing research. But now the research is bearing it out, how harmful this is. But the other thing is that when I was working with the most seriously disturbed characters, one thing stood out to me in those people that I had met, and I've met several. I've met some, when you work with thousands and thousands of individuals over the 35 plus years that I have done it, you come across several folks, hundreds of folks, who've managed to turn really seriously disturbed lives around. They've really managed to come out of the gutter and make something out of themselves and turn everything around. And to a person, I promise you, to a person, not one of them ever did that out of a sense of guilt. They did it out of a sense of healthy shame. It had to do with that day that they looked in the mirror. And it wasn't just that they didn't like what they had done, but they didn't like who they saw. They didn't like the person that they had allowed themselves to become. And they vowed that day that they weren't going to be that person anymore. And that's when their lives started to change. So we got it wrong about a lot of things. We got it wrong about self-esteem. We got it wrong about shame. We got it wrong about self-image. We got it wrong about so many things. And that's why I can't wait for this book to come out with Kathy and I. I'm my own worst enemy here. I've mentioned this on the air a couple of times. I'm the one hanging up the book.
Oh, okay. Well, I think you've got you've got too many irons in the fire that you keep stoking.
I have too many irons in the fire, and it needs a little touch-up work. And I'm kind of a stickler. I don't want it out there with things that aren't quite right. And even though my co-author was chomping at the bit to get it out there at the end of the spring, when I took a final objective look at it, I said, no, it's not yet ready. And because I have such limited time to tweak it, it's probably going to be the end of the summer. And when I go on tour and the workshops, the people are just they're also chomping at the bit. They were asking me all the time, when's it going to come out? When's it going to come out? Because this is, I think, the book we really need. So
I agree with you. And I've got one other question for you. Can
Sure.
I ask you the terms that they use, the vulnerable and grandiose narcissist?
yes,
I still think that that terminology that they're using there can be somewhat confusing to people instead of straightforward what it is, rather than vulnerable, because vulnerable goes back to making it sound like he's got problems. Maybe
Yeah.
he's that poor thing. He's vulnerable to hurt. It just doesn't. I don't know.
yeah. I hear what you're saying there, and I don't know how these terms come into vogue, and why they catch on as they do. I've never really figured that out. But those are the terms that the researchers are using, and the comparison comes very close to the comparison that I make in my books. But the important thing is to realize that these days, because of the nature of our time, because of the massive sense of entitlement, and because of the massive promotion in our culture of poor character, because of those things, the greater problem for us these days are people with fat heads who really do think they're all that, who don't care about you or what you think or the impact of their behavior on you, who are so fine with themselves despite the pain and misery that they bring into the lives of others, and are so insensitive and yet feel so great about who they are. Their egos are just inflated beyond belief. That's the greater thing to realize, that this is the age that we're living in.
Right. I agree. And the government promotes the entitlement mentality. And once you give all these entitlements, it's very difficult to take them away, because you go back to, at the beginning of the show, you talked about China. We've sent all our jobs over to China that normally we could have these people that have entitlements could go and take. There just isn't enough to go around.
Before I let you go, do you mind if I ask you one more question?
Oh, go right ahead.
Have you at all listened to the full version of America, My Home?
Yes, I have. It's absolutely beautiful.
How did you happen to hear it? Did you either play it on the website or go to YouTube or whatever?
I've heard it at some different localities that has played for, say, like, I belong to some gun clubs, and they've actually played it, because you say the Pledge of Allegiance. Some different conventions have played it, and it's just an absolutely beautiful song. It kind of resonates inside of you, and you want to kind of hum it along after you leave.
Yeah.
Leave you with a happy feeling. It's just beautiful, Doctor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Of all the things that I like to say participated and created, because inspiration comes from someplace else. I'm sure you realize that.
Yes,
But of
do.
all the things I think I've participated in creating, that's probably my favorite.
Right.
Because literally, this thing haunted me. It haunted me for years before I did anything about it. Because I'm like the world's worst musician. I got to confess that right up front. Outside of the voice I used to have, I can't play an instrument worth a darn, and I'd never composed a piece in my life. So it truly was a labor of love and a true inspiration. And nothing gives me more satisfaction than hearing that it's been performed somewhere and that it's inspired somebody. So I'm glad it did for you too.
Well, it did, and thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you for calling in, and enjoy your weekend.
I will. Thank you, and God bless.
God bless you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Well, what a nice call. And I can't believe we're already approaching the end of the hour here. So I want to make sure that I get several announcements in. Please go to the blog site at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com for the articles that are there, the hundreds of articles that are there. and the current series that I've got going on now, previewing an upcoming book on the 10 Commandments of Character. Also, I write for the blog Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life at www.counselingresource.com. That's counseling with two L's, resource.com. And also avail yourself of my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, and The Judas Syndrome, my book for the Christian faith community about why even good people allow themselves to do awful things, and how genuine faith, faith lived out, not just preached, can transform a life. And then also my book with Kathy Armistead, How Did We End Up Here? Now looking like it will be another bestseller on Amazon.com, available in the Kindle format as well, and ebook versions, as well as trade paperback. So please avail yourself of these things. But this weekend especially, Google or go to YouTube and search for Anthem for the Millennium or America, My Home. That's its subtitle. Anthem for the Millennium or America, My Home, which you'll be hearing a part of as the show closes out. Let it inspire you. And if you have a mind to be one of those or know somebody who might be of a mind to be one of those, carrying the song's message at a patriotic event or organization, and you want to join the chorus of performers or at least help spread the message of the song, contact me through my blog at manipulative-people.com, or if you go to the videos on YouTube and look in the information section about the video, and you'll find a way to contact me there and obtain the sheet music or obtain an accompaniment CD. Well, remember, folks, remember those folks that paid the ultimate price for our freedoms and how precious this freedom is. But the greatest safeguard of our freedom, the greatest safeguard of our freedom, will be our responsible use of that freedom, will be our respect for that freedom, for us restoring our personal character so that we can restore the character of this country, which is in a character crisis right now, a true crisis, the likes of which we have not seen, and threatens to bring down this wonderful place we call America. We each have to do our part. It starts with each and every one of us, and in our families, in our homes, and then in our communities. That's how we'll make America great again, one heart at a time, converting one heart at a time. So as America, My Home, takes us out of the hour, I thank you for tuning in once again to Character Matters, and I'll be with you again next Sunday evening at the same time for another edition. And enjoy your weekend. Remember those who paid the price, and remember the price of freedom as we listen to America, My Home. Thank you and good night. I'll see you next week. Dr. George Simon. Good night.